So Caitlin Clark's injury is something that is going to massively affect the WNBA. It's going to massively affect...
Caitlin Clark's injury recently stunned the WNBA. It's not just about missing games, because of the potential that this. Players throughout the league may lose millions in future contract negotiations if they miss 2 weeks. Are said to be in a panic, the timing couldn't be worse, and the financial consequences are staggering. This might have a significant impact on women's basketball salaries. What impact do you think, Caitlin? What impact will Clark's injury have on the WNBA's next CBA? Put your guesses in the space provided below.
Obviously, look, there's going to be financial impact in the teams for 2 weeks, but the long-term financial impact of this injury might actually be...
Let me explain why WNBA players are having trouble sleeping due to Caitlin Clark's quad injury. It is more than just missing a couple games. This relates to the potential loss of millions of dollars in a contract that is quickly approaching. Conversations, the timing of this injury couldn't be worse for players hoping for significant wage increases. Be worse, everyone is terrified in this situation. Caitlin Clark will not play for almost 2 weeks because of a strained quad, given that neither the WNBA nor Caitlin Clark are average leagues. In any other league, losing one player for 2 weeks wouldn't be catastrophic for the average player. Everyone knows that she is basically the financial engine of this league. The upcoming matchup between the Indiana Fever and the Washington Mystics produced the first major problem immediately. They moved this game from its original location, just like every other team in the league. They believed Caitlin Clark would sell out, so they moved the original spot to a bigger arena. They expected large crowds. Thus, they made investments in a new site, a promotion, and additional staff.
Or one of these visiting cities, paying all this money, paying up for tickets, and at the end of the day, deciding to not go, all right? Calling the whole trip.
Caitlin Clark, though, is no longer taking part, and you know what happened? Overnight, ticket costs were dropped in half. The entire arena is still empty, and there are no sales. Rather than viewing the Indiana, many buy tickets to see Caitlin Clark since the Fever struggle without their star player. At last, WNBA executives are being compelled to confront this harsh reality. The comparison to Lionel Messi of Major League Soccer is accurate in this instance. When Messi isn't playing for Inter Miami, fans go berserk. They seek reimbursement, rebates, or other forms of remuneration. Them for spending extra to see the one player who really counts. In the absence of Messi, MLS teams have begun giving away free snacks, tickets to future events, and other perks because they recognize that fans feel exploited. But here's the crucial difference. MLS publicly acknowledges that Messi is more than just a member of their league. They don't behave as if American football evolved organically. They have established their company based on the idea that Messi is the draw. On the other hand, the WNBA has been completely unaware of the impact of Caitlin Clark.
Split instance, all of it can change. If this injury does anything, it should be a wake-up call to the WNBA, the Players Association, the team owners, that just like that, all this fanfare, all this interest, all this newfound attention on the league can disappear.
The management of Wnba has spent the last 2 years trying to convince everyone that the league's growth is sustainable and natural. Stories on how women's basketball is now getting the attention it deserves have been promoted. Attributes each player's contribution to this growth and the league's financial success. Advancement, but eventually, Caitlin Clark's injuries will show how ridiculous everything is. Each and every participant will get. Over the following 2 weeks, a brutal reality check. We'll observe just what WNBA attendance. Imagine how the audience appears when Caitlin Clark isn't participating. Furthermore, the numbers will be horrifying. Based on historical data. We are talking about games that might not even be seen by 200,000 people on television. This brings us to the WNBA players' genuine fear. The upcoming talks for a collective bargaining deal. Players have been preparing to demand an abundance of expensive privileges, such as increased compensation, charter flights, and larger housing allowances, larger rosters, and help with childcare. They want to use the league's recent actions as justification for their demands. Growth, but what would happen if team owners could say, look, without Caitlin Clark, nobody watches our games? Referring to the next 2 weeks, attendance dropped by 80%, our TV ratings drastically decline, considering that our whole company depends on a single player who could get hurt at any time. How exactly are we going to give you millions of dollars? Right now, players are panicking over that terrible circumstance. They used leverage in these discussions. They thought they could provide proof in the form of sold-out venues, record TV ratings, and increased product sales. Bet their pay ought to be much higher, but if the following 2 weeks show that all of that achievement was solely due to Caitlin Clark. Let's be honest about what the stats on viewing will show. When Caitlin Clark performs, games often draw between 1, 5, and 2 million viewers. The figures drop to perhaps. When she's not playing and we're discussing games with other famous players, there are 400,000 viewers on a good day. That can't be sustained. Growth. A single athlete is bearing the burden of a whole league. The attendance numbers are far more harmful. The venues with 17,000 seats are sold out for the Indiana Fever games. It is challenging to fill 8,000 seats for other WNBA games, when normally empty venues suddenly fill up. Tickets for Caitlin Clark's trips to rival cities triple. You've returned to terribly low attendance figures if you exclude her. In order to negotiate from a position of power. This is a very difficult situation. How can you expect to make millions of dollars when your league depends only on one player? Pay, when losing one player results in a 70% drop in revenue. How do you justify charter flights and luxury lodging? The smart money claims that team owners are secretly hoping that ratings and attendance would suffer during the course of these 2 weeks. They seek concrete proof that the league's recent achievements are only because of Caitlin Clark. This gives them all the resources they require to negotiate low-paying contracts and insufficient advantages. Think about it from a business perspective. Will you promise to compensate each player as if they were superstars? If you own a team and you are aware that your whole source of income depends on a single player who could sustain an injury, retire or depart at any moment, of course not. You will protect your investment until you are able to discover other sources of income and reduce costs. The other major issue is sustainability. What takes place when Caitlin Clark eventually retires? Even if WNBA players get the salary increases they want, what would occur if she continued to a wound that would end her career? Teams would have to pay outrageous salaries that they cannot afford, and the entire financial system of the league will collapse. Because of this, some analysts argue that WNBA players should sincerely hope that Caitlin Clark stays healthy and productive for as long as possible. Her performance has a direct bearing on their financial future. The earning potential of everyone else is lost if she flames out, gets hurt repeatedly, or decides to play somewhere else. At this point, things begin to become extremely intriguing, though players may argue during negotiations that because the league is so dependent on one player, they ought to receive a higher salary. They may contend that funding other participants and creating other stars is even more vital given the danger of losing Caitlin Clark. But since it recognizes that the claim that current growth is unsustainable is risky. Actually, aside from Caitlin Clark, there aren't many real draws in the WNBA. Despite Paige Becker's popularity, her audience may only Caitlin Clark's is half that. Angel Reese is more of a celebrity than a basketball star. They are more intrigued by her theatrics and social media presence than by her on-court performance. Despite their talent, players like A.A. Wilson, Breanna Stewart, and Sabrina don't have a big influence on television ratings or ticket sales, even if the New York Liberty, Seattle Storm, and Las Vegas Aces have outstanding seasons. They won't be able to draw large television audiences or pack stadiums without Caitlin Clark. This absence of star power gives team owners even more negotiating leverage when it comes to contracts. Strength. They may contend that because most gamers don't significantly contribute to, there is no justification for them to get significant compensation increases given the league's income growth. Despite its brutality, professional athletics are an industry, because it takes place right before the most important contract. The timing of this injury is particularly harsh in the context of WNBA history. The players plan to make use of their performance this season as the primary rationale for higher compensation, but that logic completely breaks down if the next 2 weeks reveal that the success was all due to one player. The psychological impacts have to be considered as well. The players in the WNBA have been relishing the league's recent success, feeling that they are finally getting the recognition and attention they deserve, but it serves as a somber reminder of how quickly a single player's injury may cause everything to fall apart. It reminds them that they might not have as much negotiation leverage as they thought. The WNBA's financial reality. Another factor that players need to consider is teams. Most franchisees have only recently started to make money following years of financial loss. As a result of increased interest, club owners, meanwhile, will be very cautious about making long-term financial commitments if Caitlin Clark is the only reason for that interest. From a strategic standpoint, in the end, this injury might benefit club owners. Everyone is forced to confront the disturbing truth of the league's financial structure and gives them concrete data to utilize in conversations. They can argue that they are. Until the WNBA creates several true stars, it will not be able to compensate players like superstars. WNBA salaries in the future will Be determined within the next 2 weeks. In a game without Caitlin Clark, players might still have some negotiation leverage. Obtain favorable evaluations and attendance, but when it comes to contract negotiations, players will be in a terrible situation. Begin if the numbers drop, as the majority of experts predict, the reality that Caitlin Clark doesn't make nearly as much as the situation is further compounded by the league's appreciation of her. She receives a meager salary compared to male athletes with comparable impact under her rookie contract, but other athletes have profited from her notoriety without necessarily contributing to it. As a result of the pay scale, the injury to Caitlin Clark might actually reduce the earning potential of other players more than it damages her own, resulting in a fascinating dynamic. Despite the fact that she already has a contract, other players' wage demands were supported by the league's growth. They lose ground in negotiations greatly if such growth isn't sustainable. This raises the broader query of whether the WNBA can ever grow into a genuinely solid multi-star league, or if it will always depend on one outstanding player to oversee the entire process. Currently, the latter seems to be the case, making long-term financial planning is quite difficult for club owners and players alike. This wound is the result of expressing their worst fear at the most dire time for WNBA players. They were about to touch down contracts that had the potential to transform their lives, and now they had to face the possibility that their leverage has entirely disappeared. Over the following 2 weeks, they will negotiate from either a position of strength or weakness. And early indicators suggest the latter. Caitlin Clark's injuries was discovered at the worst conceivable time. WNBA's biggest weakness, gamers would have to settle for much less than the millions they expected, wishing for in their upcoming contracts. Women's basketball's financial future will be determined in the following 2 weeks. What do you think will occur next? Click the like and subscribe buttons for additional WNBA financial analysis.